On the night before Thanksgiving, 1971, a man in a dark business suit sat in seat 18E of a Boeing 727, sipping bourbon and 7-Up, and calmly handed a note to a flight attendant. The note said he had a bomb. He demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. He got everything he asked for. Then, somewhere over the pitch-black forests of Washington State, in freezing rain, at 10,000 feet, he lowered the rear stairs of the aircraft and jumped into the darkness. No one saw him land. No one saw him again. The FBI spent 45 years and over 1,000 suspects trying to find him. They never did. His name, or at least the name he gave, was Dan Cooper. But the world knows him by a different name, one created by a reporter's mistake. D.B. Cooper. This is the only unsolved hijacking in American aviation history, and after more than half a century, we still don't know who he was, whether he survived, or where the money went. It was Wednesday, November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. A man in his mid-40s walked up to the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter at Portland International Airport. He was dressed in a dark business suit, white shirt, and a narrow black tie. He carried a black briefcase and a brown paper bag. He purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. The ticket cost $20. At 2:50 p.m. Pacific Time, Flight 305 departed Portland, a short hop to Seattle, just 37 minutes in the air. There were 36 passengers on board, including Cooper, and a crew of 6. Cooper sat in the last row, seat 18E. He ordered a bourbon and 7-Up, lit a Raleigh cigarette, and appeared completely relaxed. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was a lonely businessman's phone number and slipped it into her pocket without reading it. Cooper leaned over and said quietly, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner read the note. It said he had a bomb in his briefcase and demanded she sit next to him. She did. Cooper opened the briefcase just enough for her to see. 8 red cylinders attached to wires connected to a large cylindrical battery. Whether it was a real bomb or an elaborate fake, it looked convincing enough. He gave her his demands: $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 front, 2 back, and a fuel truck standing by when they landed in Seattle. By requesting 2 sets of parachutes, Cooper did something clever. He implied he might force a hostage to jump with him. This ensured the FBI couldn't rig the parachutes to fail, because they had to assume an innocent person might be wearing one. The demands were relayed to the cockpit. Captain William Scott contacted Seattle. The airline agreed to cooperate. The FBI scrambled to assemble the ransom. Flight 305 circled over Puget Sound for nearly 2 hours while the money and parachutes were gathered on the ground. At approximately 5:45 p.m., the plane landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The tarmac was dark. A single Northwest Orient employee carried a white canvas bag containing 10,000 used $20 bills, $200,000, along with 4 parachutes up to the aircraft's rear stairs. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow carried them to Cooper. He inspected the money. Satisfied, he allowed all 36 passengers and 2 of the 3 flight attendants to leave. Only Mucklow, the 3-man cockpit crew, and Cooper remained on the plane. Then, he gave his next set of instructions. Cooper told the crew to fly to Mexico City, with a fuel stop in Reno, Nevada. But his instructions were strangely specific, and they revealed someone who knew exactly how this aircraft worked. He demanded they fly below 10,000 feet with the cabin unpressurized, landing gear down, wing flaps lowered to 15 degrees, and airspeed no faster than 200 knots. These weren't random numbers. The Boeing 727 was one of the only commercial jets with a rear ventral airstair that could be opened in flight. Cooper knew this. He'd chosen this plane for a reason. At approximately 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 took off again from Seattle-Tacoma, heading south. Only 5 people were on board. Somewhere over southwestern Washington, Cooper told Tina Mucklow to go to the cockpit and stay there. She was the last person to see him. At around 8 o'clock p.m., a warning light in the cockpit indicated the aft air stair had been deployed. The crew felt a subtle shift in the aircraft's pitch, the tail dipping slightly as pressure equalized. Outside, it was pitch black. A freezing rainstorm hammered the region. Temperatures at 10,000 feet hovered around -7 degrees. Wind chill made it far worse, and somewhere in that howling darkness, over dense, unlit forest with $200,000 strapped to his body, D.B. Cooper jumped. 2 Air Force F-106 fighter jets were trailing the 727 at a distance. Neither pilot saw anyone jump. Their radar detected no parachute deployment. A man had just stepped off a commercial airplane into a moonless, frozen sky and vanished. When Flight 305 landed in Reno at 11:02 p.m., FBI agents surrounded the aircraft. Cooper was gone. He'd left behind 2 of the 4 parachutes, his clip-on tie, his tie clip, and 8 Raleigh cigarette butts. The largest manhunt in FBI history was about to begin. Within hours, the FBI launched a massive ground search across southwestern Washington. Hundreds of agents, military personnel, and local law enforcement combing thousands of acres of dense forest and rugged terrain. They searched for 18 days straight. They found nothing. Not a single footprint, not a scrap of parachute fabric, not one $20 bill. The FBI analyzed every piece of evidence from the plane. The clip-on tie was sent for forensic examination. The cigarette butts were cataloged. 66 latent fingerprints were lifted from Cooper's seat area and the surrounding surfaces. Composite sketches were drawn from passenger and crew descriptions. The first sketch, known internally as Composite A, was widely distributed but later criticized as inaccurate. Flight attendant Florence Schaffner said it looked nothing like Cooper. Witnesses said it made him look too young, too narrow-faced. A second sketch, Composite B, was developed the following year. It was considered more accurate but still imperfect. One crew member said it captured Cooper but made him look too angry. The FBI began running down leads. Over the next 45 years, they would investigate more than 1,000 persons of interest. Every one was either cleared or lacked sufficient evidence for prosecution. The case consumed the Bureau. It became the longest and most exhaustive investigation in FBI history, eventually filling 66 volumes of case files. And the public? The public fell in love with D.B. Cooper. He hadn't hurt anyone. He was polite. He tipped the flight attendants. He said please and thank you. In an era of Vietnam protests and Watergate, Cooper became a folk hero, the gentleman bandit who outsmarted the FBI and disappeared into the rain. Songs were written about him. Bars named drinks after him. Every Thanksgiving, amateur sleuths gathered to debate his identity. He became more myth than man. But the FBI wasn't celebrating. They had a hijacker on the loose, and absolutely nothing to show for it. For nearly 9 years, the trail was ice cold. No money surfaced, no parachute was found, no credible witness ever came forward. Then, on February 10, 1980, an 8-year-old boy changed everything. Brian Ingram was on a family picnic along the banks of the Columbia River, near a stretch of sand called Tina Bar, about 9 miles downstream from where Cooper was believed to have jumped. The boy was smoothing sand to build a campfire when his fingers hit something buried a few inches down. He pulled out 3 waterlogged, crumbling packets of $20 bills, still bound by rubber bands. His parents contacted the FBI. Agents rushed to the site and confirmed the serial numbers. These were bills from D.B. Cooper's ransom, $5,800 out of $200,000. The discovery electrified the investigation. It was the first physical evidence linked to Cooper since the night of the hijacking. But it also deepened the mystery. How did the money get to Tina Bar? The location didn't match any of the FBI's calculated drop zones. The bills were degraded in a way that suggested they'd been in the water for years, but they were found buried in sand that had been deposited by a dredging operation in 1974, 3 years after the hijacking. Had the money washed downstream? Had someone buried it there? Had Cooper himself survived, spent some of the cash and discarded the rest? The FBI dug up the entire beach. They brought in heavy equipment and sifted tons of sand. They found a few more fragments of bills, but nothing else. No parachute, no remains, no answers. To this day, the Tina Bar money is the only ransom cash ever recovered. The other $194,200 has never been found. Not a single bill has ever turned up in circulation. Over 5 decades, the FBI investigated more than 1,000 people. A few stand out. Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. was a Green Beret, a helicopter pilot, and a Sunday school teacher in Utah. 5 months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy pulled off an almost identical crime, hijacking a United Airlines flight, demanding $500,000 and parachuting from the plane over Provo, Utah. He was caught within days. The similarities were striking, but the FBI officially cleared McCoy. Witnesses said Cooper was older and McCoy didn't match the physical description. McCoy was killed in 1974 during an attempted prison escape, taking any potential confession with him. Robert Rackstraw was a Vietnam War veteran and pilot with a history of fraud and deception. In 2016, investigator Thomas Colbert published a book claiming Rackstraw was Cooper, citing coded messages allegedly found in letters sent to newspapers after the hijacking. Rackstraw was cagey when confronted, refusing to confirm or deny the claims. But the FBI had cleared him in the 1980s, and no definitive evidence linked him to the crime. Kenneth Christensen was a former Army paratrooper and Northwest Orient purser, meaning he worked for the very airline Cooper hijacked. His brother Lyle told investigators that Kenneth made a deathbed statement in 1994. "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you." The resemblance to the composite sketches was noted, but Christensen was shorter and lighter than witness descriptions, and the FBI found insufficient evidence. Dozens of others surfaced over the years. Some confessed on their deathbeds, some were fingered by family members, some were simply attention seekers. Not one was ever charged. The truth is, after 53 years, we still don't know D.B. Cooper's real name. We don't know where he came from, where he went, or whether he lived through the night. This is the question that has haunted investigators, armchair detectives, and aviation experts for over half a century. Could D.B. Cooper have survived that jump? The conditions were brutal. It was November, after dark, in the Pacific Northwest. Temperature at altitude, -7 degrees Celsius, freezing rain, 100-mile-per-hour winds. Cooper was wearing a business suit, loafers, and a thin raincoat. No helmet, no goggles, no jumpsuit, no gloves. He jumped from a 727 traveling at approximately 200 miles per hour into complete darkness over some of the most remote, densely forested terrain in the continental United States. Professional skydivers have said the jump was survivable, but barely. The 727's airstair deployment would have slowed the plane somewhat, and Cooper could have achieved a relatively stable freefall. But landing in dense forest at night, in a rainstorm with no visibility and no landing zone, the odds were grim. The FBI's official position was always ambiguous. Some agents believed Cooper died in the jump and his remains were simply never found in the vast wilderness. Others believed he survived and successfully disappeared. There are arguments for both sides. If he died, why was only $5,800 of the ransom ever found? If the money was on his body when he crashed, all $200,000 should have been in one location. If he survived, why did none of the marked bills ever appear in circulation? The FBI had recorded every serial number. Banks, businesses, and casinos across the country were on alert for decades. Not one bill was ever spent. One theory suggests Cooper survived the jump but was injured, hid a portion of the money, and eventually died of exposure in the wilderness. Another suggests he landed safely, buried or destroyed most of the money to avoid detection, and lived out his life under another identity. We may never know. In 2016, the FBI made it official. They were suspending active investigation of the D.B. Cooper case. After 45 years, 66 volumes of case files, and over 1,000 suspects, they had no definitive answers. The case remains open. The 66 volumes are preserved at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. All evidence is available to the public. D.B. Cooper stepped off a commercial airplane into a frozen, moonless sky with $200,000 strapped to his chest, and the world never saw him again. No body, no parachute, no identity, just a clip-on tie, 8 cigarette butts, and 3 rotting bundles of cash on a riverbank. He's become a legend, the only person to hijack an American airplane and get away with it. Whether he survived or not, he won. Because 53 years later, we're still talking about him, and we still don't have a single answer. If you have a theory, drop it in the comments. And if you want more cases that were never meant to be found, subscribe to Cold Vault. I'll see you in the next one.